Trojan fans, welcome to another edition of the Peristyle Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, joined alongside, we call him Triple Double, Connor Morrissette here. We're a couple of Massachusetts guys here in Southern California talking USC football. We haven't spoke since, been on the air since the New Year. So Happy New Year to you, Connor.
Thank you.
Welcome
Happy
in the
New
studio
Year.
again.
Yes, Happy New Year. Good to see you. Let's attack 2025 like we did in 2024. Let's keep up the good work.
We got to jump all over 2025. There's a lot of stuff we're going to get to. There's roster stuff, coaching changes, a little GM talk potentially. We want to get a show, and I know it's weird, Friday a little bit early, right in the middle of the semifinal game. It was a great one last night. We'll talk about that a little bit since USC played both teams in that side of the semifinal bracket. But I have a very tough assignment. I'm going to the Polynesian Bowl tomorrow. I'm leaving for Hawaii. So that's a really tough one. So we wanted to get a show in before I go on this grueling road trip to Hawaii. Back in the day, Connor, I have a picture from 2018. I didn't even remember. Me and Chris Trevino and Gerard Martinez in San Antonio, Texas, on New Year's Eve, covering it was the Army All-American Bowl then. Now it's the Navy All-American Bowl. But I used to go to that every year and stuff. And then the Poly Bowl popped up, and I'm like, wait, I could go to a Hawaii one instead. So now I do that. So I've let, if everyone wants to go to San Antonio, you're welcome to it. But I take the Hawaii one. So I'm a team player.
Smart man. Do you know who's going to be there? I haven't taken a look at that roster yet.
I've heard Husan Longstreet might be there.
Okay, so, there you go.
Yeah, there's a few names. The roster sort of comes together.
Yeah, and I know how those things work. But if Longstreet's there, that'll get you a nice leg up on the competition. Start talking with him, see what he thinks about next season. I love it.
Yeah, we are live on YouTube, and we're getting some comments from the chat. If you have, you want to put a comment in the chat, I'll put some of them up on the screen if you happen to be watching us live, or you're watching the YouTube version of this later. We appreciate you doing that. We're also live on Facebook, so thank you. Shout out over there if you want to put a comment in the live chat of Facebook. We can put that up on the screen as well. And if you have a question, just put question in the front, and we'll try to get those questions. We do have other questions. You can email us, podcast@uscfootball.com. You can send us a voicemail or shoot us a text at 424-254-9141. That's our number. Got a couple voicemails to get to. And if you have the Apple Podcasting app, you can leave us a 5-star rating and review. You can leave a 5-star rating on Spotify as well. So that helps grow the show. On Apple, we do love to get the new reviews. It's a lot of fun to read what you guys have to say. And we will give away some Trader Joe's gift cards to the best reviews. We've been doing this on the Podcast of Champions, but we'd like to do this here as well. And we got a couple new ones, Connor. Do you want me to read them for you?
Sure.
So this one is from
it's a long one.
Dylan from Albuquerque.
I see him on Twitter. That's nice.
Yeah, here for Connor and a gift card. If you've been a miserable USC fan for the past 7 years since the Pac-12 Conference of Champions championship victory over Stanford, then listen to this podcast because there is no sunshine pumping about our glorified, once loved, once feared Trojan football team. And yes, even 2022 was miserable. Wow. Because even thinking about the defense gives me nightmares. It was a Grinch-miss time all season long. Connor, a.k.a. Triple Double, is by far my favorite.
Oh.
Because he tells you how it is, and he calls out Lincoln Riley and asks the questions that others won't. He's not afraid of $10 million Lincoln Riley. Riley only lets you guys watch stretching, yet Connor still brings a game to instant analysis. Don't worry, Ryan. I also enjoy you too, but I must say I feel completely cheapskated with my $17 gift card I received from the Podcast of Champions. I know it's not your fault, and this is UCLA's. And that is UCLA's for only scoring 17 against LSU. Yes, that's why we had $17 gift cards. It's not a ploy to receive a second gift card. Wink, wink. This is me wanting to feel some sort of extra joy for a Big Ten team completely obliterating an SEC team who was outclassed and didn't belong in the playoff. Probably said Kirk Herbstreit. Has anyone thought of looking for Connor for USC's general manager?
Oh, okay.
With his knowledge of the roster and transfer portal, he'd get my vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dylan. More reviews from you, please, my friend.
We love Dylan. So our buddy John and Brea, if you don't know, he's over at Trader Joe's. He's been awesome to us. He'll send me gift cards based on a certain game, and UCLA scored 17 points against LSU early in the season. He sent us some $17 gift cards. The latest batch, we have our $42 gift cards because Ohio State put up 42 points on Tennessee. So that was really nice. And we have one more from NetBro, 5 stars. My go-to source for USC football news. I thought about giving this podcast 4 stars because honestly, there's too much content. That's the only negative I see. Wow. I lose productivity at work, and my family suffers because I'm so plugged in. I enjoy all the shows except for the one with Harvey Hyde. He gives me Lee Corso weekend at Birdie's vibes. Wow. And the crew, I never read these before, by the way, so sorry, Coach. And the crew gives real takes, even if other listeners don't agree. Thanks, guys, for giving me another way to stay invested in USC athletics. Fight on, Nelson, class of 2012.
All right. Thank you, Nelson. Sorry that we give you so much to distract you from work.
I created a T-shirt at one time that said, decreasing, USCfootball.com, decreasing work productivity since 1996.
I love it. I love it.
So I'll send you one of those shirts. No, I don't have them anymore. But we'll send you a gift card. So thank you for the review. And send me an email, and I will send you a gift card. Speaking of Trader Joe's, we love them. The holidays were great. Do a lot of Trader Joe's stuff, and then you get the refresh. I like going into Trader Joe's the early part of the year because like you kind of transition out of the Thanksgiving, Christmas stuff, and then see what's coming up new. I'll bop around. I like to see what kind of different beers there are. There's some really cool craft beers in there. You can buy just like the 4-pack, so you're not like committing to like a case of them or anything. But there's some really cool names of ones, and a lot of the packaging is neat. So they're cool stuff to have in your fridge. Like if you're gonna have people over, and you can show them like this crazy beer. And there's lots of good wine deals as well. So it's a New Year's. If you're doing a dry January, then you probably didn't like that because I'm talking all about alcohol. But a lot of good stuff at Traders that's non-alcoholic too. Definitely go by the cheese section and set up a nice charcuterie board. You could do it for your girlfriend, Connor. There's some different stuff. Get the fig spread to go with the cheese, and they have a lot of different crackers and stuff. So those are my recommendations for early New Year's Trader Joe's runs.
I love it. They have so much good stuff. I love going over to Trader Joe's, and thank you, as always, to John being such a good partner for the show and for the Podcast of Champions as well. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. With one of the comments, John, praying for the families in the fires, for sure. I just want to mention that, too. We are here in Southern California. Connor almost evacuated to my house from where he was. Luckily, he got to stay. We're down here in the South Bay. It's totally fine, even though I got 3 notifications that we had to evacuate, which were all erroneous. But, yeah, thousands and thousands of structures and tens of thousands of people displaced and losing home. It's crazy what's going on here in Southern California. So I know Trader Joe's has been helping out with that. Our own Ahmad, he lost his home in the fire. So it's, it's touched. If you live down here, it's definitely touched people in your life. So whatever you can do to help, I would recommend you do whatever you can, volunteering, making donations, whatever you can do.
Just awful. I'm sure you saw that Miller Moss, USC's old quarterback, lost his family home and I think his grandmother's home. The Palisades and that Altadena, Pasadena area just got wrecked. So awful, and I feel so bad for everyone affected, especially Ahmad. Just an awful, awful situation.
Yeah, it's just terrible. It's hard to deal. Like we're right where we are right now. There's some ash in the air. The air quality isn't great, but there's no immediate danger around here. But if you're up in the Altadena area, Pasadena, near the Rose Bowl, I climbed Mount Wilson a bunch of times. Those towers up there got threatened. And of course, Malibu just seems like a magnet for disasters, and just driving up to see people drive up PCH and to see all of those buildings destroyed. The Real Inn was an amazing place to go get, Rosenthal Winery. I know one of the people that work there, and I used to be a member there, and like all these places are just gone, and all these crazy homes. It's just terrible.
Yeah, areas that you never thought would be affected are gone. It's just absolutely devastating.
Yeah. This is from TJ. Was that Connor's burner account that wrote that? I don't know. It was your mom or something?
Dylan from Albuquerque's real. I've seen him on Twitter, and it's not me.
No, but he was the one that that was the one. No, he's definitely real. He's been in both of them. So,
but I can see why that question would come up.
I still love that when we were at the Notre Dame game last year, and like you were with your family, and someone came up and called you triple double, and your mom was extremely excited. She thought this was great. Yeah,
that was hilarious.
Yeah. Jeff says those towers are radio repeaters. Yeah, I think ESPN, like USC's radio station went down during the fires. Like they weren't able to broadcast. So the USC, I think it was a men's and women's basketball game that weren't able to be heard over the air. They were going to have to play it later because of that. So, Dylan in Albuquerque, he says, no, I wrote it. So he's in the chat. So unless like Connor, maybe Connor's mom's like logged in. Like, yeah, show me your hands, Connor. Like,
thank you, Dylan. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a kind of long preamble, but we haven't talked for a little while, so it's good to sort of get all that stuff out there. Like we said, we have some questions we're going to get to. So we had sent in a bunch in. I wanted to make sure we do a show before I go on this grueling trip to Hawaii. But the big news coming out of the portal, Emmanuel Pregnon is leaving. And this was a weird situation. Of course, probably USC's best defensive lineman, would you say?
Offensive
lineman.
Or Jonah.
Yeah. So he was up there and committed to, I think, the Senior Bowl, right? The Reese's Senior Bowl, or is it? Yeah. So that usually means, okay, you're going to leave. Then we get word he's going to stay. I think Josh Hansen, the new offensive line coach, sort of confirmed that in leading up to the bowl game. And then once you play the bowl game, even though the portal was closed, you have a window of 5 or 6 days afterwards to put your name in the portal. And then once you put your name in, sometimes it takes a while to check, and we don't hear about it until it actually gets processed through compliance. It was like kind of at the end of the deadline, and Emmanuel Pregnon is in the portal. So that's a big loss for USC, Connor. I don't know if you want to give some thoughts on that.
It's hard to be like USC made this big mistake when they thought that they had retained this player. Excuse me. They signed him to a deal for next season, and then he turned around and left. So it's hard to be like, oh, USC made this big mistake by letting this guy walk. What I will say is that the timing is really frustrating if you're a USC fan, because it happened on the last possible day that players could enter the portal. So then it's kind of slim pickings at guard, whereas if this had happened earlier in the cycle, USC could have maybe been more aggressive recruiting interior offensive linemen. I'm sure you read the War Room today, Ryan, and I won't give too much away, but there was a paragraph on contracts and players needing to fulfill playing time requirements to get their full allotted money. So I don't know anything about this situation, but maybe Pregnon said, what if I get hurt? I want to go somewhere where I'm guaranteed more money. Maybe that was part of it. So maybe you could be a little frustrated at USC for that. But it's hard for me to come out and say, oh, they made this big mistake when Emmanuel Pregnon and USC agreed to a new deal for next season. Zach Hansen, the new offensive line coach, tells us that after a bowl practice. He plays in the bowl game. You'd think if you play in the bowl game, you're definitely coming back, too, after what was said. So it's a tough break, and I do wonder if the contracts were more guaranteed, if that had maybe helped bring him back. But I also think Zach Hansen leaving probably played a pretty big role in Emmanuel Pregnon choosing to leave as well. And, of course, the dollar amount. That is probably the biggest factor here. He's a guy who is maybe like a fringe third, fourth round guy, maybe even fifth if he were to enter the NFL draft this offseason. Why not go play for around $1 million somewhere else, try to improve your stock and maybe make more money in the future, or just, maybe it doesn't go the right way that you expect it to go. At least you have some money in your pocket moving forward after this next season. So I understand the move, but if you're a USC fan, you got to be pretty frustrated, which I get.
Yeah, for sure. And then we've talked about the whole NIL situation a lot. We mentioned in the War Room, and Connor talked about it. If you're not a USCfootball.com subscriber, it's definitely worth it just to read what's going on Friday. We got a lot of notes about the general manager, notes about recruiting and, with player representation, all that kind of stuff. There's a whole new layer of this with agents being involved. So when we would report on recruiting before, there was, sources you could get that were maybe sources on USC staff or sources that player parents or recruits parents, but now you have agents too. So there's a whole lot of people, and people might tell you different things that don't, always, they have that from their own point of view, but there's a whole layer to this with the agent stuff, and being able to talk to agents. They're more involved in what these player contracts are, and all of it's changing too, because now part of it's going to be revenue. And I think USC sort of has been behind the curve a little bit when it comes to these NIL deals. And, we kind of give some details in the War Room, at least what we were hearing from the agent side of the requirements. And I think this is my point that we've talked about a lot, that it's not about the money. Like USC's raised money. It's about how does USC spend that money? How do they utilize those resources? How do you get the most efficient bang for your buck out of the money you are able to raise? And I think that's hard for people to sort of grasp. Like, well, why, well, USC doesn't have the money. They have money. They're just terrible at spending it. Like if you have a friend, it's just not good. And that's part of the reason why you need a general manager. And some of these contracts that, maybe other schools aren't doing. If you sign with Oregon and they're just like, here's a pile of money, you just get it. And if you sign with USC and like, here's a pile of money, but you got to do this, this, and this, and this, there's more appealing to the pile of money that doesn't have the restrictions. And some of that's compliance and everything. But with the new revenue share, there shouldn't be at least as much of that as you're talking about. The athletic department can just pay you. And that's just, they're allowed to pay you up to a certain amount. It'll be about $15 million for the football team probably. That money shouldn't come with any sort of stipulation. So that's what's a little weird about this, because they could have offered, if that was a problem, you could have offered money that was not with no strings attached, I guess, that you don't have to make. And, is it hard to make an appearance at the Boys and Girls Club or something like that? That's the kind of stuff that they do. They come on our show. Like those are the kind of things that appearances that they will make. But the athletic department now has the ability to give away actual just money, pay for play. And so maybe that changes a little bit, but that's certainly something that's concerning. Not about, hey, it wasn't this much money. It was about what are the strings attached to that money.
And Pregnon has a big-time agent, Tony Wiley, who has worked in NFL front offices and has been a long-time NFL agent. This is a guy who understands contracts, and he probably told Pregnon, hey, look, I think you could maybe get more. I know we agreed to this deal with USC, but let's maybe take a step back, enter the portal, and assess all of our options. So I do think it's a mix of things. The money is the biggest factor, but I wonder if Josh Henson was still here, maybe would Pregnon have wanted to stay? Maybe he didn't love that coaching change. It's hard to say. We haven't heard from him, so I don't want to speculate too much. But I think financially that has to be the biggest part of it. And the frustrating part is, like, you thought you had that done. And one other thing I've heard, like the general manager's job, when USC eventually brings one in, I know we'll talk about that too, is to recruit the current roster. So you'd hope if you had like a rock star GM, stuff like this wouldn't happen, yes, where you recruit your own roster so well that the player doesn't even think about testing the waters. Now, it's hard to get in the brain of a good player, and it's so unpredictable. But you do wonder if they had someone in place who recruited their own roster a little bit better, maybe they wouldn't be in this spot. I think that's fair to question.
Yeah, we can talk a little GM stuff too. There's more portal news, or they did get an addition on the offensive line, but we can transition to a little bit of GM stuff. Again, I put some tidbits in the war room about what I've been hearing about the ongoing search for a general manager, but just in general, no pun intended, general manager, but it's a unique role because I think it is important to have the kind of negotiating skills that a general manager in the NFL would have, but there's not the structure around it like you have in the NFL. Like basically everyone on your team is a free agent, like all the time. And so like Connor said, part of the GM's job is to recruit the current, like you have to keep the players on your roster happy. I mean, Oregon signed a quarterback that hit the portal a month later. Like he didn't practice, play a game. I don't even know if he did a workout, and he's already gone. There's stuff like that where you just have to always be recruiting your own team. And then knowing what's worth, if you have a guy that's potentially going to pop and wants to get paid a lot of money, would you rather have him or you get someone that's transferred in that has a lot of proven production at the same position? You have to kind of make these calls. What's the best way? You have a certain amount of funds. What's the best way to spend the money? So evaluating your own team, high school players, guys on other college teams. I mean, it's a lot to do. The evaluation process is part of it, but negotiating and knowing what the value is. And then it's kind of like the money you get is a lot of it's from the athletic department. From donors, though, is a big part of it, even the athletic department money. Then how do you say, like, hey, I signed this guy for $1 million and he sat the bench and left? You have to be accountable to. We can't have a donor feel like I just gave you $1 million and you just threw it out the window. So there's a lot of that this GM is going to have to do. And I think that's part of the reason why it's taking a long time for USC to hire one. But I think it's extremely important to bring one in. The role is very unique. The way this is, there's NFL elements of this, but without the kind of regulations. Everyone's not a free agent all the time in the NFL, and in the college right now, that's the way it is. So it's pretty crazy. And I think USC would do itself a lot of favors, and the roster would be a lot better shape, if you get a really good GM in there.
It is just taking a little too long for my liking, though.
Yes.
That, I think, is a problem. I remember talking to someone who's really plugged in with the search, and they said, we're hoping to hire someone before the bowl game. And that was December 27th, I think. So it's now January 10th. They're still evaluating candidates, it looks like. We heard some murmurs. Maybe they've had a finalist, and they're trying to finalize that, but I haven't heard anything with that since. There's just way too much smoke here. Like, everyone knows that they're looking at this position. They're trying to bring someone in. It's been happening for so long. The Courtney Morgan saga started way back last offseason, and he eventually stays with Alabama despite multiple attempts from USC to bring him in. So then the season starts, and it's tough to bring in a general manager when the players are going and the coaches are going through the grind of a season. So I understand that. But once that regular season is over in November, the time to bring someone in was then, and December goes by. Here we are, almost to the middle of January by now. I don't know why it's taking this long, and I think it's not a very good look when you have people at USC saying, we're close, this is happening, here's the timeline, it's close, and then it keeps dragging out. It's fair to ask, what's the holdup?
Yeah, and I think this is one of those situations that it would have been great to have someone in place before the early signing period.
Yeah, absolutely.
After that, the longer you wait, I think it still hurts. The fact that the window was open, and if you had a GM, maybe you don't lose Emmanuel Pregnon. Maybe they do the right things, say the right things, make the right calls, strike the right deal to fix whatever that situation was. And so it's the longer you go, it's certainly hurting you. But I think long term, USC needs it badly. And I think the longer you go, the more it shows how badly USC needs a general manager. Lincoln Riley has a lot on his plate, and we can talk about his performance, but it's been underwhelming, right? You shouldn't be where you are, right? You shouldn't have been 6-6 and barely making a bowl game in year 3 of a coach that's paid $11 million a year. That just shouldn't be happening. He calls the plays. He's running the team. This whole new world of NIL and transfer portal and all that, a lot of schools that have great head coaches also have a great general manager, and it's a big part of it. You can say Dan Lanning does amazing stuff, but they also have a really great GM, and I think getting someone like that is the most important thing. You would like to do it as fast as possible, but if it takes longer to just get the right guy that's going to fix problems going forward, I'm okay with it. But you're right, the longer it goes, just the more things are going to happen, and a lot of your roster for 2025 is set. Like, you can do some changes, but this is it's going to make 2025 tougher than it would have been if you had a GM like in November.
Miami has hired multiple personnel people since the offseason started. North Carolina with the new coach and Bill Belichick. They brought in Mike Lombardi, but they've hired some personnel people. It just seems like other schools, they're not just looking at one GM to be the end-all, be-all. They're hiring new staffs. It's separate than the coaching staff, obviously. It's a general manager, and then it's other personnel people to try to manage these rosters. So I think this new general manager who comes in is obviously going to be a big boost, but potentially you need multiple people to recruit your own roster with just the crazy world that we're in and the sort of lawlessness that exists in college football. It's hard for one person to be in charge of everything, and that's why we see Miami bringing multiple guys, North Carolina bringing multiple guys. I'm sure it's happening at other schools as well. You need to completely overhaul the old strategy of just the coaching staff is also in charge of the roster and recruiting. Now it's totally different. It's totally changed. It's much more professional. And once this first domino falls, I still think there need to be more dominoes to fall in the future.
Yeah. Professional is a good word, and USC, and I think they've hired some good people. Jen Cohen, Jay, like that. I think there's good people that are in place that are trying to make it a more professional organization. But for decades, it wasn't, and the changes in college football now requires it to be professional. So that's been part of the challenge, I think. Wendy in the chat says, "Hi, Ryan and Triple Double. First time, long time. I just want to thank you for enlightening all Trojan fans on USC football news. I also love and look forward to Tunnel Vision Weekly. Fight on." Well, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you,
that
Wendy.
was nice.
Appreciate it.
Wasn't sure if there was like a question there. And then we had one other one. Oh, so Christopher on Facebook, and we got people on Facebook like shouting out where they're from. I think we had Alabama and another one. So thank you for getting in the chat on Facebook. We love you guys over there. Are NFL candidates available prior to each team's season end? So my understanding is that they're not. It's funny when you watch the NFL when they're like, they make announcements of who's being interviewed. Like the Chicago Bears are like, "Hey, we just finished interviewing Pete Carroll." Like it's very open. Where college is like, you never want anyone to know that you interviewed anybody. It's like, so I don't know. It's so weird. Like, who cares if you know who's getting interviewed? But yeah, I think if they're still in the playoffs, then I don't think you're available to contact them. I think that's my understanding.
If they have a bye, the situation with the head coach interviews, like Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, he can take virtual interviews this week because the Lions are on a bye. So I wonder if that's the same for personnel people, but that's only a guess at this point. I know if the season is over, all the non-playoff teams, you can go and have a field day interviewing all those people. But the way the head coach interviews are set up, if you have a bye, you can talk to other people. So maybe that's the same with the personnel stuff. I'm not entirely sure. It seems like they have some people in mind, though, Ryan, and things are getting closer. But I kind of push back on the notion, like, oh, the person who they have is still in the NFL, and that's why they.
Yeah, if that's what you're getting at, I don't think so. No.
Yeah, I see that a lot, and hey, maybe something happens in the future that leads them to bring in someone like that. But I don't think that they're targeting someone who's still in the playoffs, and that's the holdup. That's not the sense I get.
Yeah, we had mentioned in the war room, but like just look at the news. The Raiders fire Antonio Pierce, and then so his name's going to come up at like potential. I think someone on the board was like, could he be the linebacker coach? I don't know if he's going to go from head coach in the NFL to USC linebacker coach.
He also has a show cause from all the Arizona State stuff. So you can't touch him if you're a college program.
But like 2 days later, they fire their GM, Tom Telesco. I know Colin Cowherd talks about him a lot on his show. He's friends with him. Like, I don't know, could you look at a fired NFL GM?
Absolutely.
It's like, why not? So I think there's a bunch of sort of options out there. But I think you do want someone that knows the college game, too, because it's a very nuanced game. I mean, if you were just an NFL GM and that's all you did, and all you dealt with professional, athletes, professional agents, ownership, billionaire owner people, and then you come into college and you're like, wait, what is going on here? Like, this is insane. I think it's such a nuanced sport and so many weird quirks to it. If you only have NFL experience, I think that would probably be a mistake too. But I don't know. We'll see.
It's
no
so
GM
hard.
yet.
It's so hard because like, who has experience doing this? It's all on the fly. Like, this is such a new world. So that's a big part of it. I do think someone with exclusive NFL experience and not a lot of college stuff could potentially help just because of how crazy this new world is. But you're right, Ryan. That's probably a mistake to bring in someone who's only dealt with the NFL. It would be nice to bring in someone who's been at both places. But like, what is the ideal candidate with that? Because if you've been in college and you've been in the NFL on the personnel side, like that used to just not exist. You were either an NFL personnel person or like a college assistant coach. There was no crossover. Now there's a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Want to talk transfer portals, the guys they have brought in?
Yeah. You want to start with from your alma mater? Like,
So funny story. I don't know how to say his first name, but he goes by Big General, and that's what it said on the Syracuse page for him, the roster. He doesn't like to be called his first name. The new center USC
it's
brought in.
John Ray or something?
John Ray. Big General Reed is his name. And right when he entered the portal, I was like, USC needs a center. This makes too much sense. And so he visited this week, and he ended up committing. But I was able to DM with him and go back and forth, and he told me he was committing before he announced it publicly. And then so it was just nice to bond with a fellow Orangeman. We talked a little bit about Syracuse, and he gave me the heads up that he was committing. So once he announced that, we had our story ready to go. I like this move a lot. An experienced center, a natural center, an older player. I think he's going to be 24 by the time the season kicks off. This is a transfer portal edition that I like. No mixing and matching with the current guys on USC's roster. This is just a plug-and-play center who I think could be pretty solid for USC. And they brought in a few other guys, too. I listened to the Two-Star podcast, and Gerard Ryan is really excited about Wayman Jordan, the junior college running back who won the national championship at Hutchinson Community College this past season. Watching his signing event, his high school coach went on and talked about how he felt like Wayman, who's from Florida, was one of the best Florida running backs of the last 20 years. Gerard's excited about him. He's produced a lot. That's a player that I'm really excited about, too. So I think my favorite two additions from the portal so far are John Ray Reed, Big General Reed, and Wayman Jordan. And then we can get into some of the other guys here as well. But I can't wait to see what Jordan can do with the ball in his hands.
Oh, yeah. All right. We have Blackie Chan says it's Jayon Ray.
Jayon Ray?
Jayon Ray? That makes sense.
I'm just going to call him Big General. That's what he likes
that's
to go by. That's
name.
an awesome nickname.
Big freaking General. Like, all right. That's good. And there's like some Emmanuel Pregnon vibes, like, him coming in. It's a bigger, it's a Power 4 school in Syracuse, but, different than Wyoming, like where Pregnon came in. But just like a beefy guy that's just going to come, just looks the part. He's like 6'6", like 316 or something? Is that what, or something like that?
I don't think he's that tall.
Oh,
maybe 6'3", 360.
6'3", okay,
but
yeah.
Huge, big guy.
Yeah,
he'll help, and that was the biggest portal thing that they needed. I thought the center was the first on my list, and one thing that's a little frustrating is they targeted the Wake Forest center, and then they thought they were going to get him, and then Florida State doubles up USC's offer, and then he goes to Florida State. Paging a general manager, maybe that would help if you had one to assess the market a little bit better. So I'm excited for Big General Reed, and it's good that he jumped in the portal. If he had jumped in the portal earlier, maybe would have been USC's first choice potentially. So I don't want to say he's their third choice, but they did make a move for a different player, and then that player went to Florida State. They were interested in the TCU center who ended up going to Miami. There have been a few instances this portal cycle, like with every program. It's not exclusive to USC, but there have been some instances where they target some guys and then they're not really even in the ballpark for some of them. So glad they got this center, but I do wonder if you could give truth serum to the staff and say, if you could have any center, who would it have been? I wonder what their answer would have been on that.
Interesting. And what other additions? Anyone kind of stand out to you, like with the?
So we got to talk about the big defensive lineman, because the last time we did a show in here, I think, Ryan, I got pretty animated. That was the last time, right? And then
I think so.
And then they signed those two defensive linemen, and everyone's like, "Yeah, how do you like them now?" Good additions. So Keyshawn Silver, I think you have to be the most excited and just most bullish on him because he has played more. He's more experienced. He was in the SEC last year at Kentucky and played a lot, started a lot of games for them. Jamal Jarrett was a really highly ranked recruit. Didn't really do much in his 2 years at Georgia, so hopefully with Eric Henderson and Danton Lynn coaching those guys up, you can get a little bit more out of them. The production that they had, especially Jarrett, really was non-existent. Silver was able to do a little bit, but he was in a rotation at Kentucky, and they weren't a very good team this past season. So I'm cautiously optimistic about those guys. I prefer the guys in the portal who have this known, proven production, and they come in and you can just plug and play them. But those guys haven't necessarily always worked out either. It's not a perfect science. So I'm excited about those guys. They're massive. They should really help USC with what they're doing. You throw in Jakeem Stewart as well and all the returners that USC has in the middle of that defensive line. That's probably the deepest position on the team, I'd say, with the young guys that they have too. So they should get some combination out of all those bodies that they have that will be really productive. I wonder if they wanted David Blay more. I wonder if they wanted Lee Hunter more. Hunter goes to Texas Tech. Blay goes to Miami. I think Hunter going to Texas Tech kind of changed up the market a little bit. USC, they wanted him. They courted him, but he goes to Texas Tech, gets offered a big-time NIL deal, signs with them, and then Silver, who had already visited USC, his camp got kind of quiet. I think USC renegotiated with him a little bit once Hunter went to Texas Tech. So, again, I wonder if these guys were their first choices, but hey, you can't complain when you add a 6'4", 336-pound defensive lineman, and then Jamal Jarrett, 6'5", 350 pounds. Those body types just haven't really existed at USC. Let's see what the coaching staff can do with them.
Yeah, for sure. Some good additions after we did our show last. Making some strides there. We'll see.
I just don't know what's going on at linebacker.
Yeah, I thought there'd be a linebacker coming in, and
they have no coach still, and that is a big reason why I don't think they've had some success getting guys in. But I guess if they take care of all their other needs, and then they have to just worry about a few supplemental pieces, and maybe you can get a starting linebacker in the next window, like that's not the end of the world. But that was number 2 on my probably number 3. My list of needs, it was center, it was defensive line, which they've adequately taken care of, and then it was linebacker. And I don't even think they're really in on any transfer linebackers right now, not that I've heard lately. So not totally sure what's going on with that. It doesn't help that they don't have a linebacker coach, but that to me was a pretty big need that for whatever reason they haven't addressed.
In the chat, we're getting some linebacker coach recommendations. We got Gerard Mayo, like the former Patriots. He was head coach for a year?
Yeah,
one season.
Had a tough year. He was a pretty good linebacker coach, though. So I don't think he has any connection to Lincoln Riley.
And you want to go from NFL, like Matt Hentz went from FCS head coach to USC linebacker coach. I don't know if you're going to go from NFL head coach to USC linebacker coach, but yeah. And then we had some Ken Norton Juniors in there. Names that you're familiar with, people want to bring back all the time. I don't know what he's doing right now. He was a DC for a while. I'm not sure if he's a DC anymore in there. USC did get a coach hire, though, because we talked about Josh Hansen taking over for Zach Hansen taking over for Josh Henson. And now he's coaching the offensive line. So USC end up hiring a new tight ends coach, but also will coach outside receivers. And I don't know, with that caveat, I want to ask you if that means anything to you. But Chad Savage comes in from Colorado State.
That's probably the best news out of the offseason outside of maybe a few additions, depending on who you like from the portal. But Chad Savage, it's crazy, Ryan. I wrote the story about how these high school coaches in Southern California absolutely loved this guy because when he was at Colorado State, he was their receivers coach and recruiting coordinator, and he was in charge of recruiting Southern California. I had high school coaches who felt like the USC staff had dicked around their players and not done an honorable job recruiting their players, say, look, this is going to help. This is going to get me to be more excited about USC. This is going to get me to have a better relationship with USC. And from a recruiting standpoint, I don't think they could have possibly done a better job. This guy's plugged in. This guy has high school coaches telling me he's like a brother to me. USC did a really good job from a recruiting perspective, bringing in Chad Savage. People are really excited about him. And now that he has more resources, he's at a bigger brand. USC's NIL, they have more money to spend than some of these other programs. There's no reason why USC can't get really elite slot receivers and top-of-the-line tight end prospects moving forward as long as this guy's on staff. I don't really see anything getting in the way of that now that you have the money, the relationship guy, Lincoln Riley being Mr. Offense. I know they struggled last season. Just optically, this should really help a lot from a recruiting perspective.
No, I agree with you there. Serb in the chat says USC's changing their approach to recruiting. They're starting to emphasize the West Coast. Things are changing, guys.
Yeah, they did send out a lot of offers to 2027 prospects from California, some 2026 guys as well. So I don't know what prompted them to change, but I noticed that too. I think
probably our show.
It's been hard not to notice based on all the offers that have gone out. Better late than never, a step in the right direction. Glad to see USC is making those changes. I just wonder why they weren't doing it earlier.
Yeah, and Serb is in the chat saying he doesn't know who the linebacker coach is going to be, but he expects a West Coast guy to be named soon. So we got some insider.
So the popular name, but it's been the popular name for so long, is Robert Bala from Washington, who was on Nick Saban's staff in 2023. And I'm curious, Ryan, your thoughts on this. So Eric Henderson, USC's best recruiter, he goes up to Washington on the first day of the contact period and publicly makes it very public that he visits a University of Washington linebacker commit in the 2026 class. If that's me, like putting 2 and 2 together, I kind of think like if Bala comes from Washington, now you have this 2026 linebacker who's committed to Bala at Washington. USC, oh, they're already involved with this guy. Now we have your coach. Like, come play for us in 2026. I don't know if it's exactly works that way, but to me that kind of seemed like, why is Eric Henderson going after a linebacker from Washington if there isn't some link there? So we'll see.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know.
But Bala's been linked to him for so long. I just wonder what the holdup is. Like, this guy could have joined your staff, the second the season ended or the second Entz left for Fresno State. So I'm not really up to speed on exactly what's going on with this search. I'm asking around. I'm trying to get as much information. Ball is a name I've heard, but that's been a rumor for a long time.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where USC goes from there. But we had some, if you're in the chat, Serb's dropping some knowledge there. We'll see if he's right or not. Cool. Okay, so we did that. Is there anything else we need to get to, like news-wise? Like we could talk about the game last night a little bit. USC, or is there anything else on the team you want to?
I'm just looking at portal guys. So DJ Wingfield, I think, is going to come in and play guard. It would be my guess. I've been trying to get in touch with him to ask what position the USC staff wants him to play. He was a guard at Purdue last season, sort of had an up and down year. The year before, he was at New Mexico and played right tackle and did better. To me, it seems like Tobias Raymond would have that right tackle spot, and Wingfield would come in and be Emmanuel Pregnon's replacement. So we'll see with that, but another solid addition there on the offensive line. I'm curious your thoughts on the offensive line, Ryan, because USC loses their two top guys in Monheim and Pregnon. They bring in Reed and Wingfield. I want to feel good about the offensive line, but I'm a little nervous just how much top-end talent they have outside of Elijah Page, where they lost their two studs, and they bring in some guys who were solid and have had good careers so far. They're older, they're experienced. But is this going to be an elite offensive line next season? I'm not totally sold on that as of January 10th, but let's see what happens in spring practice. Let's see what happens in fall camp, of course. I just want, is this a USC offensive line? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the encouraging aspect is just watching the bowl game, that when young players get thrust in that we didn't see, then you're kind of wondering, well, why didn't these guys get any reps? Because they played as good or better than the people that they replaced. So I think that, the aspect of, you could like to maybe bring in another portal guy, but they added some, and then you feel pretty good about the guys that are on the team. And then I don't know how much, Zach Hansen was involved with, developing those guys, because the unit started off pretty bad last year, and then, maybe he was helping out during, I don't know. But they got better as the season wore on. And when you got to see some of the young guys, they looked like they could actually play. So I think that's encouraging. We just didn't see, there wasn't a lot of rotation, or you didn't see, guys getting in there. So I think you can be encouraged by what you have, probably not the deepest, but I think there's, you can be encouraged from what USC is going to put together. But a lot of it's going to depend on, how good is Zach Hansen. This offseason is going to be important for him and some of those guys' development and integrating the new people, the new pieces that you have. So, but I wouldn't be super discouraged just because when you got to see those young guys play, if you thought they weren't, USC material, they look like they were.
Mm-hmm. I just wonder, is Page, Wingfield, Reed, Noah, Raymond an upgrade over Page, Pregnon, Monheim, Noah, and Mason Murphy? We'll see. It seems I don't know if they've made these massive upgrades, but again, that's a conversation probably for a different day. They addressed needs that they had. They probably got the best guys available at the time, so it's tough to be too frustrated by it. We'll see. I just, in my head, in year 4, you'd expect maybe some more homegrown guys to come in, and the transfer portal has really thrown a wrench in a lot. So again, we'll see what happens.
Blackie Chan says, do you think Justin T can move out to right guard?
Potentially. He looked really solid at right tackle.
He was right tackle in the game, right? Yeah.
No, he was left tackle. He went in for Elijah Page when he got hurt, and he looked really good at left tackle in that game. It's tough to judge from the bowl game when Texas A&M, their 3 defensive linemen, all are NFL guys, all don't play. So they did a nice job against the competition, but I think we learned our lesson. You don't want to have big, firm, overarching takeaways from one game when a lot of guys opt out based on what happened in the Holiday Bowl. So we'll see moving forward. I did have one thing I wanted to add, Ryan.
Okay.
It's escape. Oh, yeah. So you mentioned last night. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, too. So we see on the board, online, everyone's saying USC played Notre Dame and Penn State close. We're not as far off as some people claim that we are. And I would agree with those people if USC, a lot of that roster was coming back, but they just have such an overhaul from this season to what they're going to have next season that I have a really hard time saying they are close when, like, you just have no idea who's going to be in the secondary right now. You don't really know what the linebacking core is going to look like. What does the offensive line look like? We have the projected starters, but a lot of those guys haven't played much together. You had two different quarterbacks, one when you played Penn State, one when you played Notre Dame. If they were a younger team and they were bringing most of those guys back, I'd probably agree with a lot of the posters, but when the roster overhaul is in the state that it's in, I don't think you can possibly say, oh, we're so close. We have no idea what the team's going to look like.
No, I agree with you. It's not like this was building. You built 2024 because 2025 was going to be great. Like, you were built to go to 2024 with the guys that you brought in, a lot of one-time players, and now you got to redo a lot of it. I think what it tells you, yes, USC lost to Penn State in double overtime. Yes, USC had the ball to go in and tie the score at the end of the Notre Dame game before throwing 2 pick sixes. I mean, all that stuff is true. I think that's more of an indication of USC should have been better than 6-6. Like, they shouldn't have lost to Maryland or Minnesota. Like, you should have beat a Michigan or a Penn State or a Notre. Like, you could have won any of those games and you did not. I think it's more talking about how USC underachieved, that they were better than what their record was. They were the only team in the country to have a fourth quarter lead in 5 games and lose them all. There was no one that was even close. There was, I think at the 11th game, there was like 6 teams in the country that had led in the fourth quarter, in every single game. And USC was one of them, one of 6 in the whole country. And the other 5 teams lost 5 games total, and USC had lost 5 games total. So that just, to me, that's more of indictment, I guess you could say, of USC's inability to finish games, making poor decisions along the way, not see they're close and this year is going to be better. It was last year the schedule set up well. You should have been better than you were. And I think that's what it tells me more than anything.
I feel the same way. And then the lack of a true road win outside of UCLA, which does that really count? Like, they didn't have a true Big Ten road win last season. How can you possibly say you're close to the college football playoff when you can't win on the road? So that, I get the sentiment and it'll help people feel better, but like, that was kind of bothered me yesterday. Like, people are so ho hum, like, oh yeah, we're close, we're right there. It's like, the games were close, but if the team was 9-3, like, sure, I'd give you that. But 6-6, like, it's really hard to go from. I mean, TCU did it, so they're examples, but it's really hard to go from 6-6 to.
It can't. I mean, it can happen, but this wasn't a stepping stone season. This was
which is what I thought it was going to be too, which is another frustrating part of it. At the beginning of the year, I thought they had a chance to finish strong, and they can bring back a lot of those class of 2023 guys. Like, they would be in a better spot. Now, I want to see what the final roster looks like, but the schedule is easier next season. Like, I'm not ruling anything out for next season, but like, to right now make these big claims when we don't know what the roster looks like and there's one more portal window to go. It's a little bit early to make any big claims for next season, but I don't rule anything out. I don't say for sure right now, like, oh, there's no chance that they make the playoff. They could, but we got to see what it all looks like.
100%. And I've got a lot of people telling me, look at the schedule. It's not that hard.
What were you saying last year?
Guess what? Like, if you lost to Maryland, I'm not even caring about the schedule. You haven't won, like, you haven't got on a plane and won on the Big Ten yet. You lost to Maryland. Maryland's only win in the Big Ten this year was USC. If you were capable of losing that game, I'm not looking at the schedule as easy or hard. I don't care. Like, if every game was at Oregon, at Ohio State, whatever, okay, that's fine. It's not that. There's a couple tough ones, and all the rest look winnable. But every game on USC schedule was winnable this year. Was there a juggernaut on the schedule? Like, 2 teams, made the playoff, right? Like, but you were in both of those games. You could have won those games. They
were at home, too. That's a big part.
And you had those at home. You weren't outclassed talent-wise in any game, and you lost 6 times. Like, so if you're capable of doing that, where you have more talent on the field than most of those teams that you lost to, I'm not looking at the schedule like, look, it's easy. You've lost to easy, crappy teams. So the whole schedule thing, I don't care. Like, you have to take care of business. You have to take care of yourself. USC, Michigan was beatable. You lost to a team that couldn't throw the football. Washington, not that good. You go on the road and make them look good, and they, and lose and try to throw the ball all over them. They're good pass defense. There's so many reasons across this, every game. So I don't give a crap about how easy the schedule is. You had an easy schedule this year, and you went 6-6. So that's more about, hey, take care of your own, take care of your house, not worry about what your neighbors are doing. Yeah. Like, who cares what your neighbors are doing when your lawn looks like crap and there's holes in your roof?
And I remember last offseason too. People were like, oh, you think they're not going to be that good, 7-5? Like, show me the 5 losses. Where are the 5 losses? I don't see 5 losses. Well, how'd that work out for you?
Yeah, there's Quinn, Mr. Negative strikes again. I don't know if it's me or
probably
you,
me.
But
to add insult to injury, a corner that USC had on campus just committed to Houston. So I don't know what's going on with them with the defensive backs, man. They might get Bishop Fitzgerald, the safety. They have had a really, really tough go at the cornerback spot. They've brought in a lot of prospects since DJ Harvey committed, and man, I don't know why it's worked out this way. They've targeted a bunch of corners, but they have just come up empty on so many guys.
But Quinn, look, just be clear. We're not trying to be negative. We're just trying to be real. And that if you were here for the beginning of the show, we read the reviews. Well, if we think everything's going great, if they signed a bunch of dudes in the portal that you didn't expect, and they're like, wow, this is going to be, we would say, they're going to be really good this year. And if they've missed on a bunch of guys and lost more guys than you thought they should have, they're going to be like, that's a concern. And that's where we are right now. Quinn says you can be good very quick. And that is, you can be good quick. We've seen Indiana turn things around. We've seen teams go from crap to great. But there's a building process. Like, why is Ohio State a juggernaut right now? Their offseason, they were as down as you could be, losing to Michigan and not making the playoffs and all that. Boom. And then they went bananas in the offseason and signed all this talent and kept the talent that could have gone to the NFL. Like, half their defense could have gone to the NFL and been starters. And they kept all those guys. So then you're like, you can get really good really quick. And they are. They look like a juggernaut right now, even though they had a couple losses during the season. We're not seeing that exactly. We're seeing like, that could be good. That's, but not like what they should have been to be. I'm so mad to be 6-6. We're going to go freaking bananas in the portal. We're going to keep our guys that we want. And it's just that, the optics of it aren't great. USC could still be good. I think you keep D'Anton Lynn, the defense is going to be better. You'd like to get them some better personnel. USC's offense took a huge drop off last year. You didn't expect that. Lincoln Riley's his track record is always great offenses. He had 1 year that was bad. It was his last year. They could get good quick. But there's usually signs of like, this is going to make you, this is why. We would see it now, like, here's why they're going to be good. We can't give you a definitive reason, like, here's why they're going to be a lot better. Like, they could compete. If they're similar to what they were this year and then they play better and finish games better, they could certainly have a better record because they should have had a better record this year. But you're not seeing the, like, oh, they just signed Quentin Junkins and all these dudes like Ohio State did, where you know for sure they're going to be better. Not trying to be negative, just trying to tell you what we're seeing that, yeah, they could, but if you just want to tell us, like, oh, yeah, USC could be undefeated. Like, I don't know, I guess, but like we're not seeing the evidence of that just from what the additions have been.
One name that would make me feel a lot better about the USC defense, they're in on Jamori Robinson, who was at UTSA. I think they're in the Sun Belt Conference. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in the Sun Belt Conference. He's one of those junior college guys. He'd be 25 by the time the season started. He had 10.5 sacks last year at UTSA. It's a level up in competition, clearly, but he would come in and just have the most production out of anyone on the edge for USC, putting him in a room with Anthony Lucas and Braylon Shelby and Cameron Fountain. That is a plug-and-play potential NFL guy. He's weighing his NFL options, and there's some eligibility concerns with him. If he is eligible, it looks like USC has a really good chance. That's a player that I would point at and say, okay, I can see it. D'Anton Lynn, what he was able to do with Liatu Latu, not saying Jamori Robinson is Liatu Latu, but he's an NFL prospect on the edge who could really, really help this USC defense, whereas I think Keyshawn Silver has a chance to help USC's defense. He certainly won't hurt it, but I don't know based on what he's done from a production standpoint if I feel confident saying he's this home wrecker, he's going to come in and be amazing, or I feel like with Jamori Robinson, if USC adds him, that would give me a huge reason to be a lot more optimistic about the USC defense, about as much as one player could.
Yeah. All right, well, why don't we do this? Let's take a break. We probably don't need to talk about it. We've been going a while. We don't need to talk about the Penn State game, Notre Dame game. I know a lot of USC fans aren't really happy. USC would have got a little bit more money if Penn State won because you get a share. The conference gets a share, but they still have a chance to get a little bit more money if Ohio State wins this evening. So why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break. We got a bunch of questions to get to, so we'll get to those in a minute. All righty, we're here back on the Peristyle Podcast. I've started a bunch of questions you guys have had in the chat on YouTube and Facebook. We also have some voicemails and some emails to get to, so we'll just start cranking through these. This one, let's see. Okay, I'll play this one for you.
Hi, my name's Steve. Live in Carpinteria, California. Love Connor. This question is for Connor. You know, Connor's the second coming of Dan Weber. Don't lose him. This is my question. If Lincoln Riley was lucky enough to recruit a top 10 class, you know, with his stubbornness, bad judgment, and really kind of unimaginative play calling, do you think he could actually take the Trojans to the playoffs? I'm not sure. The jury's still out. So, you know, if you could comment on this. I mean, I'm not sold on Lincoln Riley, but he is the coach, and he'll be there for a while. So hope you answer the question.
Thank you for the kind words. I do think if they recruited a top 10 class consistently, if you have like 3 in a row and you stack them like Oregon's done, like Ohio State's done, like teams in the SEC, Texas is done. There's a reason that those teams are seemingly always in the mix at the end, regardless of some questionable coaching stuff. I mean, Dan Lanning, he won the Big Ten championship, so you got to give him credit for that, of course. But like his track record in big games is not very good right now, despite him inheriting a lot of talent and recruiting really well. So I do think talent is the most important thing to get you where you want to be. Like coaching can of course help, but in college football, if you can consistently bring in top players, like you're going to be in a way better spot. That's obvious. That's any level of football. It's not the NFL where coaching, I think, can really get you over the hump. So I do think that Lincoln Riley would get USC to the college football playoff for sure if they recruited at the level that people expected them to when he was first hired. Now, does that mean he has other issues he still needs to work on and like we forget about those? No, of course. But recruiting, getting those top 10 classes consistently, say you stack 3 in a row, I think they get in for sure. All
right. Well, thank you for that voicemail.
Thanks for the kind words. This is a great show.
I know. They're like, it's a big ego Connor show. It's good. All right. Brian in Birmingham. Hey, Ryan. Just wanted to know your thoughts on the Alabama quarterback, Jalen Milroe. After Alabama's lost to Michigan, I would imagine he would return to school to improve his draft grade.
He's already gone.
He's already gone. If his name is entered the portal, do you think he would be a fit at USC? Happy holidays, everyone. Brian.
Already gone. There was no big-time quarterback in the portal this year outside of probably the Washington State guy who followed his offensive coordinator to Oklahoma. But I think quarterback play overall right now in college football, it's down. I mean, look at the final 4 guys who made it. Aller last night.
Oh, my God. Aller was terrible.
Terrible mistake. Riley Leonard throws 2 picks. I really like Riley Leonard, and Notre Dame uses him so well as like a fullback, honestly, or sometimes, not honestly. That's how they do it. And Quinn Ewers has sort of been up and down. Same with Will Howard. So quarterback play right now, it's not in a great spot. That there was no home run guy outside of John Mateer. I feel like Fernando Mendoza I like from Cal.
Yeah, so. The South Dakota State guy was.
Yeah, but he goes to Iowa. Like, doesn't that kind of tell you like?
He had a lot of production. I mean, he was popular. Like,
you really like that guy.
Well, he scored like 1,000 touchdowns. You know, he had like 37 rushing touchdowns and 100-something throwing, passing touchdowns.
Miami tampered with everyone, and they get Carson Beck. So.
Did Beck commit there?
Today.
Oh, he did. Okay.
If Milroe had entered the portal, would USC have been in on him? Maybe, but I don't know if there was one guy like outside of a 5-star younger player who could have gone into the portal where Riley would have really gone after him. I think he feels good with Maeva, and there wasn't an option out there that would have really even made it a competition.
Quinn Ewers, like fight on Natties in the chat. brought up Quinn Ewers. He says it's overrated, but Ewers was asked he was asked a question about getting offered like $6 million out of the portal.
To go to Oregon, maybe.
Yeah, probably Oregon or something. But interesting. Yeah, I don't know. But there's still a couple of quarterbacks left. But yeah, Drew Aller was terrible. There was talk about him like going to the NFL. Like he was bad.
Did people watch the games? I mean, maybe they watched the USC game where outside of his picks, he was awesome. But besides that game, he's so up and down.
Yeah, that was not good. And then USC brought in Heward, right? Sam.
But he's going to be the third string quarterback.
Yeah, he was like a former 5-star that just never was good. So it's just like he probably was a 5-star because of his name, I'm guessing. But was it his uncle is Luke Heward,
quarterback
right?
coach Luke Heward.
So yeah, there's there. All right, let's another voicemail. Let me play it for you.
Hi guys, it's Rick from Vista. Just checking in with you. Thanks for the show. Appreciate it. I just got a quick comment. I see a lot of people trolling to get rid of Coach Riley, but the guy produces Heisman quarterbacks and produces teams that are in the top 20 in offense every year. He just needed a defense to complement that. And lo and behold, here comes a defensive coordinator, Danton Lynn, who did a phenomenal job this year. Can you imagine what he's going to do with actual players that can play the positions that are good quality, high-ranking players? I think he's going to be better. And, I mean, it's proved that the offensive line that USC has, they always have one or two games where it's rough in the beginning, but by the end of the year, they're doing well. I mean, look at all the holes they open when it comes to running. Granted, the passing attack seemed it was lagging. I think that has to do with the quarterback. He seems to throw the ball into areas where they shouldn't be thrown. But I'd like to know what you guys think about what Danton Lynn's defense would have done the first year with the Caleb Williams team, how they would have done if they would have had the defense to complement the offense. Anyways, I'd like to hear from you. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Having Tuli Pelotu in a Danton Lynn scheme would have been awesome. Imagine him lining up all over the defensive line. I feel like the secondary was, even though they didn't look good at the end under Alex Grinch, they had some players. So
yeah, I think a good defensive coordinator would have helped.
Yeah, the linebackers were kind of spotty that year, but you could probably overcome that. I think Lynn was at his best when Liatu Latu was lining up all over the place and wreaking havoc, and they would have had a similar kind of player in Tuli Pelotu that season, so that would have been a huge boost to the defense. They probably make the college football playoff, right?
I think they would.
They probably stop Utah enough in the regular season, whereas maybe they go into the Pac-12 championship undefeated, and then if they lose to Utah with Caleb still getting hurt, you'd hope that one loss would be enough to get you in. But then maybe would it be a Florida State situation where it's like, oh, your quarterback was hurt, we don't want to put you in. I don't know, but they only did lose the one regular season game, and it was a high-scoring shootout. Like, it's not crazy to say if they had better defensive coaching, they'd probably go undefeated, right? Yeah,
no, I agree with you. It's funny, that voicemail sounded like it was going into 2024, where it's like, hey, man, the defense is going to be better with Danton Lynn. You're right, it was. The problem is the offense dropped off way more than anyone expected, and that was the biggest problem, that they were pretty crappy on offense compared to what, this team's bread was buttered by scoring a whole bunch of points. I definitely am a believer of, if you have a 40-point offense, like, you're not going to have a shutdown defense the defense probably would have been good, but you're going to give up more points when your offense scores a lot more. So, Iowa doesn't score a lot of points. Your defense can be a little bit better. If you got the same defense and you start scoring 10 more points a game, the defense is probably going to give up a few more, just, even though it's the same defense. I kind of believe that, where it's like the style of the game dictates. But if you had a competent defense, now, to be fair, they turned the ball over. They got a lot of turnovers, and maybe that just sort of made up for everything. But, competent defense, maybe they don't get as many turnovers. Maybe that was the right defense for that season. I'm not sure. But I kind of agree with you that they would probably do a lot better with a competently coached defense than what they had.
And let's look ahead now to next season. They're not done making additions, of course, but based on what they have right now, you got to feel pretty good about the middle of the defensive line. Just with all the bodies that they have, that's probably the strength of that group. Someone will emerge. A couple guys probably will emerge. Edge rusher, you have some high-end talent there, but right now you only have 4 edge rushers, maybe 5 if Elijah Newby moves over. So I think you got to feel pretty good about that group because they have a lot of high-ranking players. I'm concerned about the rest of the defense. So Eric Gentry at linebacker, and then Desmond Stevens, and then not a whole lot else outside of him. You need someone else there, and Gentry, who knows what's going to happen with him from a health perspective. In the secondary, Kamari Ramsey's back. DJ Harvey's going to play a cornerback spot. But then right now, you're probably looking at Prophet Brown as a nickel who's a little bit unproven, Marcellus Williams, or maybe another young corner. Safety is going to be Christian Pierce. So while I like some parts of the defense, a lot of them are going to be inexperienced heading into next season. And with Danton Lynn, if they had guys who were more advanced and more experienced, maybe, would that have helped more? But potentially. Again, we're having an off-season conversation on January 10th, so they're going to add some guys, and who knows what the final roster will look like, and maybe some of those young players do really pop. What I'm trying to say is there's some holes on the defensive side that you can get the best coaching possible. There are going to be some guys who, just because they haven't played a lot, are going to make some rookie mistakes at the beginning of their next seasons just because they haven't played a whole lot. So let's see how that plays out. Ideally, you'd like to just have a bunch of guys who you've recruited who are elite talents, and if you don't add guys from the portal, you know that those guys are ready because they were so highly ranked. You have a couple of those guys, but it's going to be a little spotty, I think.
I agree with you there. Frank in Sacramento had an email. It was basically the same question we answered on the podcast of Champions, but he was talking about Dan Lanning being an overrated head coach. But
I mean, it's such a bad look being down. What was it, 31-0?
34.
34-0. I know Ohio State had that awesome game plan, and they were awesome. They were world beaters, but Oregon has so much talent. You can't be down 34-0 in a neutral site game. So
yeah, that was rough. He's still good. I mean, he's a relentless recruiter. He had a bad game. You ran into a buzzsaw and didn't look good doing it.
And Washington had a bunch of talent last season. I think if you had
Oregon had more talent.
Oregon should have won one of those games.
They should.
They had them at home, right?
Yeah.
Or no, never mind. They played at Washington, right? Never mind.
Well, they played 3. He was 0 for 3 against Washington in the two years there.
Yeah.
So they had some opportunities, but I still think he's good. I don't think he's.
They beat Ohio State at home.
It's not the second coming or anything, but he's a relentless recruiter, and he has a lot of resources, and it's not just because of the resources. He utilizes those well. He still is, recruits these guys like it's their last, his last day on earth. And you couple that with great resources from Phil Knight, and you're going to be really good at acquiring talent. And he is.
Yeah. If they don't get into the Final Four next year, though,
they got a tough draw.
They did get a tough draw.
That's Penn State. If Oregon's playing SMU and Boise State, they're probably in the semifinals. They had to play a red hot Ohio State team. It's just sort of kind of a bad draw there. But yeah, I'm not going to just go all in on saying Dan Lanning stinks.
Yeah, he's not a bad coach like James Franklin isn't a bad coach, but those guys haven't won the big games lately. I mean, way worse for Franklin than Lanning. Lanning's still so early in his career.
He's young.
I just want can you being down 34-0 in that game, is that the kind of result that carries into next season, or
that's a rough one?
Not?
Sweet Tooth says he's just out talents other teams. That's sort of been USC's MO for a long time anyway, but they just had more talent than everybody, and they don't anymore. That's a little bit different. Joan, our buddy Joan, wrote in, hey, Ryan and Connor, Happy New Year. I wish you good health and happiness in 2025. Yesterday, the news came out that Emmanuel Pregnon is in the portal, and I looked, and sure enough, he's in there. Obviously, some other universities reached out to him with an offer. Why wouldn't USC match his offer from the other school? I know it's tampering, but there are no rules for this game, and I know there's no integrity left in the sport, but it seems incredulous to me that USC would let him go and not match or exceed the offer. We developed him, and he obviously was coming back for one more year. I wouldn't want to go, but if it's more money and I needed it, I would go in a heartbeat too. Please let me know your thoughts on why this would happen.
This is one that's a great question. I wonder about the contracts. Maybe USC could have potentially matched something that he had gotten, but Pregnon's camp wasn't sure that, what if they get hurt? What if he gets hurt? Maybe he doesn't get all the money up front. I don't know. I don't want to. That was a speculation, so I haven't heard a ton based on this, but like you would hope that he would say, hey, I'm getting offered this much from some other schools. Can you offer me the same? And ideally he'd be back, because I think he is a player that you should overextend yourself for and you should bring back. But I understand why you'd be frustrated if he had already agreed to a deal before. Like you would hope that you would agree to a deal and just shut everything else down. So it's a tricky situation, but I totally get the emailer's question. Like there was a rumor that he was offered $150,000 more to go to another school. Like ideally you'd be able to make that up. But again, I can't speak to the truth of that.
Thanks, Joan. Yeah, I got a text from a NFL Hall of Famer USC person that was like, what the hell's going on with this? And don't have the whatever inside scoop on exactly, we put some stuff in the war room of what we had heard. I'll just say this, that if USC had if I had to bet money on this, like if you said, hey, if USC had a great general manager in place, would Pregnon still be on the team? And I would bet on the side of yes. If USC had a great GM, Pregnon would have stayed. Could be completely wrong. I'm just telling you, without the knowledge of exactly how this deal or whatever, how it went around, just my assessment of the situation, if USC had a good GM, they would have figured out a way to make it work. That would just be my guess.
He's one of the pillars, or would have been one of the pillars for next season. He's a guy, it's frustrating because he agreed to a deal. You'd hope he would stop talking to other teams, but like that's someone, it's a guard, but I feel like you kind of got to bend over backwards to make sure he's back. So it's a tough look.
Let's do some chat questions. So if you put a question in there, I've started and I'll come back to it now. Blackie Chan, out of the transfer players USC got, who do you think will be the most impactful?
Probably Wayman Jordan would be my guess right now. Let's see what the final tally is, but between how Gerard talks about him, between how his high school coach talked about him, between, albeit at the junior college level, what he did last season, he seems like a really, really good running back who I think USC has a chance to unlock a lot of potential with him.
I mean, hard to argue because, like, who have been, like, the most important transfers for the 3 years Lincoln Riley's been there? It's been the running back, the veteran running back that they brought in, and has been a leader on the team every year, from Travis Dye and was it Emmanuel and and this year Woody Marks.
Travis Dye, Woody Marks, Marshawn Lloyd.
Marshawn Lloyd, yeah. Why am I Emmanuel? I blank on Marshawn Lloyd name all the freaking time. Like I forget it all the time. I have no idea why, but I always do. But like they've been very impactful there. From Fight On Natties, do you gentlemen feel like it's Lincoln's ego that is holding up the hiring of a GM?
I don't think it's helping.
I think you're right. I don't think it's helping. I think, and if I was the AD, if I was Jen Cohen, like what I would want to bring a GM that's sort of like an NFL GM, like Lincoln has to like answer to him. I just don't think that's the way it's going to work in college. Like the football coach is the guy that runs the show. So you need to get somebody that is going to work with him. If they're clashing, I just don't think it's going to work because you can't get rid of, in the NFL, like if you love your GM and you don't like your head coach, you're getting rid of your head coach. USC can't do that because they can't get rid of their head coach. So I think you have to sort of bring somebody in that is going to work with him. And, if I had to guess, that's what part of this holdup is more on the Riley side, I think. But that's, I'm glad we agree on that. Randy, he has a question. Thank you, Randy. I understand that the NCAA can't limit what a player can make, but why can't they limit what a team can spend?
Well, they're trying.
They're trying to do that.
But Ross Dellinger put out this story and it has a bunch of details. It was the obvious next step. Anyone or all these schools can pay $20 million to their athletes, but then what about the outside NIL funding? Like that's the new arms race. Now athletic departments have to pony up all this money from their budget to pay players, which you'd think is a step in the right direction, but like that's not a real salary cap, and there's very little that's preventing programs from having another pool of money from a collective, from donors, from other entities where you have the $20 million from the athletic department, but then you have all this other money from outside sources, and say you run a Toyota dealership. What's stopping you from, okay, you got this money from USC, but I'm a USC fan. I'm a USC donor. Come take a picture at my Toyota dealership. We'll put it on social media as an ad. I'll give you $1 million. And that's from outside of that $20 million pot. The NCAA has this clearinghouse that they're saying we're going to have these NIL deals go through here, and if they're not fair market value, we're going to crack down on them. But, like, who are they to say what fair market value is?
As soon as they do that, they'll get sued.
Yeah. So,
and they've lost every single lawsuit, like not a single one.
So they're to answer Randy's question, they're trying to do that, but it's impossible.
Yeah, it's that's what they would love to do, and I think athletic directors would like it just to be like, hey, this is what we can spend, and what USC can spend, and everyone, if you're going to spend the $15 million or whatever, only the elite schools are able to do that. But none of the elite schools are going to stop at that. You're going to keep spending more, and right now you're in this window that the clearinghouse and all that stuff isn't starting until July 1st. So it's kind of just like this is probably the craziest pay for play year because there's really no rhyme or you don't have to. All deals don't need to be approved, but after July 1st. Then, theoretically they will. But like we said, there's going to be lawsuits. And when the NCAA got crushed in the Supreme Court 9-0, things are going bad. Like nobody goes Supreme Court 9-0. When everyone agrees, you're like, ruh-roh, like this is bad. So yeah, I'd love to see that too, if some sort of like real salary cap, but
then you have to collectively bargain as players. You separate from when this happens, which I think it's trending that way, but then college football as we know it is over, which will be sad. So, I think it's the fair thing to do, and that's probably what's in USC's best interest from a competitive standpoint to make sure everyone has that same cap. And if it's a hard cap, you can't go over it. That would prevent Oregon from doing what they're doing right now and just outspending everyone. That would prevent Ohio State and Texas from doing that. That would help USC, but then there are so many ramifications that come from that, where you lose a lot of what makes college football great. So it's a tough give and take.
It is. The good thing, and ratings, whatever, don't matter. Kind of matter. Like, ratings are very high. So there's a lot of people that are upset with the sport, but a lot of people are watching it. And maybe it's different people. Maybe it's people that didn't have the core attraction or affiliation with the school. We've talked to a lot of USC fans, and I've talked to fans of other universities where they're just like, this isn't the college football that I fell in love with, but it's still being watched. Like, it's still doing well. I'm curious if it's like they're diehards. You're losing some diehards though too. So I don't know.
Well, look at the meaningless bowls, which in a lot of ways they are meaningless. The viewership skyrocketed this year, and that's not the college football playoff. That is USC, Texas A&M. That's Alabama, Michigan. That was that great Louisville, Washington Sun Bowl. That was an awesome game. I don't know if you watched
the FCS championship. Yeah, I watched that one. The FCS championship game got like a 2.4. Like, these are better than NBA games, and it's way better than college basketball games. Like, these meaningless bowls are like doing great numbers.
And we see on our board all the time and all over, like, people are saying, this isn't the college football I love. I'm not going to watch anymore. It's being ruined by NIL. It's being ruined by the transfer portal. Well, actually, viewers, which is how you measure fandom, that's probably the best way to measure fandom, viewership, is at a record high. So some people feel that way. I have a feeling that kind of skews towards older people who are really upset. I understand. It's not great from my perspective either compared to how it used to be, but I get if you've been a fan for decades and this changes now, I'd probably feel that way too. But the viewership, it says something totally different. So we do see a lot of people say, I'm not going to watch this anymore. It's ruined, but record high viewership is saying something else.
Yeah. We had a couple from Chad. How many more can we expect USC to get from the portal?
So right now they're very much in on Bishop Fitzgerald, the safety from North Carolina. It sounds like it's down to USC and Penn State for him. I think he's at Penn State either today or tomorrow, and he told me he hopes to make a decision by this weekend, so that could be a guy. Jamori Robinson, who I talked about earlier, I think he's leaning towards USC, but he was at junior college and spent time at UTSA. They're figuring out some eligibility stuff with him. By the time the season starts, he'll be 25, like I said earlier, so he is very old. So those are two guys who are in play. they need to get some receivers. They've missed on a few targets. There are some guys still out there, so that's maybe 3 guys. Maybe they get 2 receivers, so that could be 4. And they're trying to get a cornerback, so I think they could have as many as 5 more additions. But I'd probably say right now 2 to 3 would be my guess.
All right. Chad, another question. How do teams assess the NIL market when those dollar amounts are kept quiet?
Well, now it's just totally different with all these agents. Like, it's maybe kept quiet publicly, but how many NIL agents do you see on your Twitter feed all the time? Like, those agents talk to schools, and that's how you get an idea of what guys are worth. So the good agents, the ones you can trust, the guys who have experience with NFL guys and aren't just new to the space trying to make money off of college kids, those guys, you got to trust what they hear. And if you're in the player personnel department of colleges, you have your own research too. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes now where you can determine what players are worth. It's not as quiet as maybe some people feel like it is. It's a lot of stuff isn't public, and that's what I've talked about for a long time, Ryan, on the show. Like, let's make it all public. Let's have it all out in the open. But then it kind of goes back to Randy's question, like, if it is all out in the open, there's probably a salary cap. There are probably employees. College football is probably a whole lot different, maybe for the worse. So
yeah,
it's tough.
And again, having a good GM, like if an agent's like, we got a $1.5 million offer from this school, and he has contacts there, and they're like, no, that wasn't the case. So having a good GM, you figure that stuff out too. So if there people are lying to try to get themselves a better deal, and you're good at your job, you figure out what that is, and maybe that person isn't right for your roster. Jason says, how soon do you see Lincoln Riley dropping the rivalry game with Notre Dame?
Oh, man, I really hope that doesn't happen. But
Me too.
I think there's a real possibility of that, maybe more so than ever, after just what has happened here with like Alabama complaining, like, why schedule all these hard games out of conference. Like, it's trending towards, if you're in the SEC and you're in the Big Ten, you're going to play cupcakes, and then you're going to play your league schedule. So I think I'd put it at 50-50, as high as that. Like,
wow.
I think if Lincoln Riley had his say, he would get rid of it right now. But they're on the schedule, for definitely 2 more years, right?
I believe so,
and then it might not be. People have floated maybe playing every other year. I want the game to keep being played. I think it's good for college football, but as much as it frustrates me, like, I understand the USC fans who say Notre Dame needs us way more than we need Notre Dame. Like, that is absolutely true. Notre Dame needs tough games. They need, like, look at their schedule this season. It wasn't that hard, but they have scheduled some tougher games going forward. It's absolutely true, though, that Notre Dame needs USC more than USC needs Notre Dame. Lincoln Riley understands that, and I could see it going away. I hope I'm wrong. That in my heart, like, if I was the decision maker, I'd keep it. But I understand why it might go away, and I think there's a real shot it does.
Dylan in Albuquerque had a question. Could be a tough season again on the road next year. See any wins other than Purdue, if even that?
I think that Illinois game will tell USC fans a lot, because it's sort of an easy.
Illinois is good this year.
Like, they were good.
They only lost to like great teams, I think.
They're that classic, like, solid program that Brett Bielema's a good coach, a guy who just wins wherever he's at. They're probably not like an exceptional team. They probably won't go to the playoff, but they're certainly tough to beat on the road. I'm trying to pull up the schedule here, but it's Oregon is one of the other road games.
Is Ohio State
Notre
one?
Dame. No, not Ohio State next year. Oregon, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Illinois.
Oh, Nebraska,
and Purdue.
Nebraska was like meh this year.
Nebraska's done well in the transfer portal.
They're not as good. Like, they were 5 and were they 5?
No, they went 6-6. They made a bowl this year for the first
but
time.
they lost like 5 of their last 6 games or something, like similar to USC.
Yeah,
like 2 years ago.
But that's tough. UCLA did beat them on the road, so like it's not impossible. If Dylan Raiola takes a year 2 jump, there's a lot that needs to come together. But they certainly have had a really good transfer portal. Their roster is pretty good. That's going to be hard. Like Illinois, I feel like it's 50-50. They bring back their quarterback. I like their coach, but like it's a game USC.
Luke Altmaier,
yeah. So Oregon is always tough. Notre Dame is, of course, going to be tough. We'll see what the quarterback situation is at both of those schools. Those are, of course, the two toughest games. But, like, I don't rule out a win at Nebraska. I don't rule out a win at Illinois and Purdue. They should definitely beat them.
Yeah. Feedy on Facebook. Do you think the NCAA will make any changes to NIL and the transfer portal soon? The way things are, it'll be the same schools in the playoffs. I would push back. There's way more parity than there's been the way this craziness is. Like, you had Indiana in the playoffs. Like, Notre Dame, Brian Kelly left Notre Dame because he didn't think they were capable of winning a national championship. Well, now they're in the game. Like, they are capable. We saw Washington in the title game last year. The SEC was dominating for like 20 years, and now, like, it's likely going to be a Northern team to win 2 years in a row. I would disagree. I think there's a lot of opportunity for other teams, and there's a lot of teams really close. Like, Ole Miss could have made it. Miami could have made it. They lost to Syracuse. There's a lot of teams that could have made it as well. So I think there's more parity here. They're trying to make changes, and that's the whole house settlement and everything, but it's going to be challenged. But I would disagree that this is going to be the same teams every year. It used to be the same teams every year. Now it's like a smorgasbord of all kinds of teams.
I think they have to change the portal window. And
yeah,
I know
that's dumb.
The guys go to school, so, like, the reason it's in December is because you start the next semester in January. Can we stop pretending like school matters? I'm sorry, but that's the reality. Like, every sport, like, imagine if in the NFL free agency started during the playoffs. Like, that's the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. This is a problem. It puts schools that are in the Final 12 at a major disadvantage because they're game planning. They're trying to win a championship, and they have to recruit out of the portal.
Yeah.
So it does not make any sense. And I know student athletes and like school is important. I get that. But, like, as more time goes on, we're just seeing more and more. This is a business. This is football. I ideally it would be about both, but let's cut to the chase. It's not really about school. So is there a way that all the Division I programs can get on the same page and make another exception for a football player and say you can join school in February? Like, I think that's kind of what it has to be. I would like to see them have that first portal window be from like January 15th to February 1st, and then you can enroll February 1st. It's a little bit later than you would like, but when did freaking Caleb Williams enroll? Didn't he enroll way late? Like, he didn't enroll right away in January. You can make exceptions. So I think that's what has to be done. It doesn't make any sense to have it in December, especially with all the coaching carousel stuff.
Too much going on.
Let's do the coaching carousel and the playoffs at the same time, and then the transfer portal after, and say, hey, if you need to enroll in classes February 1st, so be it.
Yeah, and I think you got to change the signing day too. Like, it shouldn't be in December either. Like, keep it in February, or do an early one in like July or August or something.
Yeah, keep it. Let's do everything roster building and
after the season.
After the season, I'm with you.
Not in the middle of it, like not while the playoffs are going on. You don't have your backup quarterback opting out of the playoffs like that. If Perbula like plays for Penn State, maybe they win that game. Like that could have cost them a chance to win a national championship. The backup quarterback for Penn State is what I'm talking about. Sweet Tooth, did DeCarlos Nicholson get an extra year of eligibility?
It's not official yet, but I think he will get one.
It seems likely.
So that's another cornerback in the room. But, I mean, something – I think isn't John Ray Reed one of those guys? Like, isn't he out of eligibility if it's not for the junior college
I thought so,
ruling?
yeah.
So that's got to happen pretty quick here, else USC might lose some guys. But I do anticipate that happening. I just don't know when. Did you see Lincoln Riley's press conference before the bowl game?
Yeah.
He took a shot at the NCAA
yes.
when he was asked that. He was like, the NCAA doesn't pick up the phone to begin with, so I doubt that they're going to pick it up on Christmas when he was asked about the eligibility stuff. So I understand why he's frustrated with them. It just doesn't sound like there's been any clarity, which how many times have we said that?
Antonio, could MJ3 return to USC as a slot wide receiver?
Never rule anything out.
Michael Jackson III.
I haven't heard any.
Where was he? He was
at Georgia. Didn't play at all, despite their.
And he's in the portal again, right?
And yeah, he's back in the portal.
Yeah,
I'd bring him back. They need receivers. If he was a good like locker room guy, I don't know if he was or wasn't, but if they liked him off the field, if they liked him in meetings, yeah, bring him back. Why not?
Okay, one last one from Facebook. Again, thanks everybody for we had a bunch of comments and questions in the chat from both YouTube and Facebook. Carlos, we'll end it with this. Seen a lot of early enrollees posting about arriving on campus. Any that are still waiting on in a nervous way, Thanos has arrived, hashtag. I'm not sure,
I don't think so. The early enrollees, it was Floyd Buchard, Tristan Castro, Harry Dalton, Aaron Dunn, Alex Graham, Casey Jacobson, James Johnson, Longstreet, Stephen Miller, Alex Payne, Corey Sims, Shaquem Stewart, Nella Tupou, Elijah Vacona, Willie Washer, Riley Wormley. I think those guys are all set, and then the rest of the guys are going to move in later. But maybe you'd be nervous about the guys who are moving in later, but I've heard nothing that would make me be nervous about any of these guys. I think they're all locked in.
All righty, cool. Well, that was good. We got an hour and a half.
Yeah, a lot to get to.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff in there. So hope you guys all enjoyed that. If you enjoy these podcasts or our videos on YouTube or Facebook, you'll definitely enjoy things over at uscfootball.com. If you're not a member over there, go over, sign up. It is well worth it. I think you will enjoy all of the content from the offseason. Of course, during the season, there's always stuff going on, and we do love to talk about it here, but we get a lot more detail on the site, so go check it out. And the message board is amazing. I created it back in 1996, and it's still running strong. The biggest USC message board on the planet that ever was, hopefully that ever will be. And yeah, a lot of stuff out there. A lot of diehard USC fans, crazy USC fans talking football, both sides, yelling at each other, whatever it is. A lot of discussion and a lot of good tidbits and information you can get from there too.
Absolutely. If you're not subscribing there, you're making a mistake.
Yes. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for Connor Morrissette. We call him Triple Double. And I'm Ryan Abraham. Hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.